Welcome to our 2022 Ohio AAPI Community Candidate Forum. This forum is organized and hosted by Asian American Coalition of Ohio, Asian Services in Action, Ohio Asian American Health Coalition, and Ohio Chinese American Association. AACO, the Asian American Coalition of Ohio, is a nonprofit grassroots organization with the mission to educate, engage, and empower Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders in Ohio to participate in all aspects of American society. Our vision is to be a trusted partner in developing informed citizens and compassionate leaders and building a diverse, just, and thriving society. And tonight's forum would be moderated by Dr. Ted Sung. Dr. Ted Sung is a professor of leadership with 2 doctorates, one in management and another in psychology. He's known for recently establishing a new university called Transcontinental University, in addition to being featured in multiple medias such as Forbes. Without further ado, I'll hand the floor to Dr. Ted Sung.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So first, I'd like to thank you for all of you that are stepping up to take the candidacy and to give back to our community and stepping into public service. It is a great honor to be moderating this, and I look forward to many of your thoughtful responses. So we're going to go ahead and start with Judge Zayas. Your Honor, can you hear me?
Perfectly. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you. So let's start.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay,
Perfect.
so just a couple of quick ground rules. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to do a quick introduction of themselves, and then I'll follow up with a couple of questions, and each question you'll have approximately 2 minutes to respond. Okay, so Judge Zayas, go ahead and give a quick intro for yourself, please.
Sure. I'm Judge Marilyn Zayas. I'm one of the 69 judges that serve currently on the Court of Appeals, and I'm on all ballots in all 88 counties throughout Ohio, running for the Ohio Supreme Court. I am running to get politics out of the Supreme Court. I'm running against the governor's son. Growing up, I was one of those kids that grew up in neighborhoods that were just riddled by drugs and crime, difficult family circumstances, and all I wanted was a fair chance growing up. So now as a judge, I am committed that everyone that comes to my court to do that, to apply the law and the Constitution equally to everyone, independent of outside influences. I mean, I've been very blessed. I'm the first and only Latina to be elected to any court of appeals. I have actually decided over 1,200 cases statewide, not only serving on my appellate district, but 4 other appellate districts by special assignment of the Chief Justice. And I got to come to the Supreme Court to try out the digs and sit in on a case for a recused justice. You know, I am here because it's just so important to ensure that we are on a trajectory where we are ensuring that the courts are open and serving everyone in the state.
Okay, so some of your previous introduction was slightly cut off, but I think everybody got the gist of it. So let's just go ahead with the first question. So when you look at your own temperament, what type of judicial temperament do you have, and how does it affect your decisions as a judge?
The most important thing for me is to make sure that I thoroughly review the record that comes in front of me. and that I'm applying the law and the Constitution in every case that comes in front of me. Now, when I go to oral arguments, sometimes I do have cases of people that are self-represented. The first thing that I do for those folks is I ensure that they understand what's going to take place. And I want to make sure that they feel empowered to be able to represent themselves and present their case, because they have a limited amount of time. They only have 15 minutes to argue their case. And the reason I do that is because it's just really important that everyone, whether you're the richest person or the poorest person, you know, when you're coming to the Court of Appeals, and it's the same thing when you come to the Supreme Court, for those folks, that's their last chance to really present their case, and it's to really present that. So it's very important to give everyone that opportunity and to be patient. For me, it's not about my time, it's about the individuals being able to present their case. That's the most important thing.
Great, thank you very much for that response. Second question for you. How would you address the implicit bias that exists in the judicial system, and how would you change it if you could?
Well, I think there's several things that can be done. And some of these things were laid out 20 years ago in a report that was put together by the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court. It was a commission that was organized by the Supreme Court in order to make recommendations on how to make our judiciary more just in Ohio. So two of the things that are in that report that go straight to bias is one of those was that all judges and all attorneys and all justices, we have to take continuing legal education units. A recommendation 20 years ago was for a subset of those CLEs to be set aside for bias training. That has been left undone and unaddressed. We need a majority of justices to say, this is important. Let's implement this recommendation from 20 years ago by a commission that was put together by the Supreme Court for the Supreme Court. The other thing is the sentencing database. The sentencing database was actually born out of this report from 20 years ago. So we finally have the technology, it's been put together, but again, we need a majority of 4 justices to say, this is important to roll it out statewide, to mandate the trial judges to put in their sentences in the database, and to give access to the public, not to attorneys, but to the public, so they can see, for example, driving under intoxication, first time offense, no prior offenses, nobody was hurt. What was the sentence in Coshocton? What's the sentence in Toledo? What was the sentence in Cincinnati? What was the sentence in Cleveland? So that we can see, are there disparate sentences, and what is that range? Because if we have disparate sentences, we have 2 issues. We have people that are possibly being over-sentenced, be separated from their jobs, from their community, from their family, means that they're being released to the society and potentially posing a public risk to the society. So these are 2 of the things that are in that report. And I am committed to take that report and put it into action.
Great, thank you very much for your answer. Your passion for this topic is abundant, and you can hear it in your voice. So we appreciate you representing that effort, and hopefully it will be successful. And one final question for you, Judge Zayas. As the first Latina judge elected to an Ohio Court of Appeals, what do you think about affirmative action, and is it still necessary?
Well, that's an issue-based question.
Sorry.
So that's something that, you know, but I will tell you this, for me, the most important thing when I was elected was first to be an excellent judge. And secondly, to ensure that I leave that path open for other people who come from unconventional backgrounds and circumstances, so that they too will have the opportunity to be able to achieve their dreams through the judiciary and through, because I do know that for students of color, it is very difficult. So like last year, actually this year in February, I did a program, 69 students engaged in it. It was the Latino Law Students Associations, the Black Law Student Association, and the Asian and Pacific Islander Law Student Associations were able to meaningfully engage with judges of color all judges of color that are currently serving in the Court of Appeals, and Justice Melody Stewart that serves on the Supreme Court engaged in this program with the students.
Great. Thank you very much for that response. Okay. Is there anything, final words you'd like to share before we turn it over to another candidate?
Thank you so very much. As you know, the Supreme Court is where those important decisions are that are taking place, like the decisions on the, the redistricting maps, for example. The constitutionality of legislation is going to be challenged at the Supreme Court, but it's also the Supreme Court has authority over policy and procedures of all courts of all 88 counties. So, I ask for your community to consider voting on all of the seats that they're going to find on their ballot in November. Vote the entire ballot from A to C, from top to bottom. And when you get to Z, please remember that Z is for Zayas.
Got it. That's a great statement. Okay, so everyone, remember that Z for Zayas. Make sure you get to that name. All right, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule and especially getting out of your dinner to do that. We appreciate your presence and good luck in the elections.
Thank you so kindly. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. All right, next we have Gary Josephson, if I pronounced that correctly. So same rules, go ahead and introduce yourself, take a couple of minutes, and then I'll ask you a few questions.
Okay, I'm candidate for the United States Congress from the 15th Congressional District, Western Franklin County, Southern Franklin County, and about 5 more counties, Madison, Fayette, Shelby, and Miami counties, portions of those counties. Educational background, a degree in human resources, Ohio State. I have a degree in English from Ohio State. I enrolled as a graduate student in the College of Law, not to be an attorney, but to be a master's. 20 years union representation experience and the president, a 2,500 member union, and I've led negotiations for employers, including Ohio State University, Ohio Secretary of State, and Pickaway Human Services. I'm trained in mediation and conciliation, and I led a strike once in year 2000. So I'm well prepared to represent adamantly if necessary, but also reach agreements is the goal. Adversarial all the time. There's times for all that. But I'm very concerned of youth, environment, women's rights, and American democracy and the economy. I have recent studies in constitutional law, election law, criminal law, business, international human rights. I believe most remedies require good and engineering and include careful and honest accounting. By the way, my father is an engineer and my mother did accounting. So that we solve problems opposed to, we can differ and argue, but we also focus on solving problems. I believe in representative democracy and take serious my responsibilities to represent all, not just any one group. You'll find that there are differences, but again, I try to reach conciliation and the best for the most people is kind of the rule. I've always felt it my duty to speak up because a lot of people can't speak up. So I think my representation takes into that, and I have a lot of experience in that. And finally, I promise to listen carefully and work for the common and the betterment of everyone in the community. That's my intro.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Gary. So here's the first question. How would you go about balancing the priorities of fighting inflation and promoting ESG initiatives? For those of you in the audience that are not familiar with ESG, it's environment, social, and governance. So there's a lot of the green efforts, there's part of the DEI efforts, all wrapped up into the ESG initiatives.
Well, sounds like environmental, and one of the things that I'm very concerned with, and with the engineering interest or my readings, is that I think we're on the verge of, by going there, thinking that it's a problem going to a less economy, and I think it's one of the best things that could provide more local jobs, for the environment, safer for the worker, and I think there's, as I talked about accounting, there's ways to make this fair, so it is I won't say competitiveness, but some of that competitiveness is wasteful, and it makes anger, stability for the worker as well as the business. So some of those problems gain when there's like we have current shortages, right? And some of those are not real. They're just convenient for somebody to raise prices. So it goes into the inflation. Now, some of it is real, but you always have to remember that what's the cost of production? How much does it cost to take the oil out? How much does it process it? So when people are making too much profit because they have an advantage in the market, then sometimes you have to increase their taxes for, I think, is one of the things that would encourage stability. If that was a specific answer, that answer the questions that you were asking.
Yes, you fully addressed the environmental piece, but what about fighting inflations? How would you balance the two when inflation is at all-time high?
Who think that the marketplace is God and it decides everything. Well, place I look at it as it's just a computer. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't make value. It compares numbers and prices. So I think there's a human intervention that's necessary in the market. And when somebody is taking advantage of their market position, I think that's why you have laws, and that's why rather than impose on people, I think incentives work better. So in environmental, I took environmental, and it was very clear that when they passed environmental regulations, people try to get away, avoid them. When they passed incentives, and that you're going to be bottom line, and you're going to take care of these problems with incentives, you found people comply. I think it's true. Some of this inflationary, it's not. We can't do anything about it like it's the weather. Well, something about the weather is a different question, but it's not that it's rocket science. You know, it's requires some call it transparency. As the government is in that role, people want to keep their private business and don't want anybody to know what's going on. But if it affects the whole economy, it affects whether people can eat, live, and all that, then the people have a right to make sure that business works for public interest, for private profit.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that response. So here's a second question. I think this one may be a little bit more challenging. How would you balance the voice of your people, your constituents, versus the needs of your political party?
Well, my political party, while I've been Democrat for more than most people have been, it doesn't mean I've always voted for the candidate or embraced my, I guess I go back when President Johnson, very good socially, but on his conduct for the Vietnam War was and so I was very critical of the party. That's where I started in politics, is anti-Vietnam War, and on some anti-poverty programs. I worked on those, and so I think that country easily comes before party. And my grandfather, he was a union representative at first as an electrician, and then he became a businessman and was a contractor who hired union labor. So I don't see most of the press, every adversarialness there. I think it's the same issue. I don't see it like, I don't that big of an issue if you put your mind to it. And I think country definitely comes before party, and the people can even come before politics, that bringing peace. And I think the Constitution is not well studied and understood as being to solve problems. And one or the other political party sometimes thinks it's just an agent to stop change and prevent things from happening. So they're not being, so there's issues of making the government more fair. But when the government is, and in the times past, we had Republicans and Democrats come together and solve problems that could be going on right now. But I will work with anybody on those problems, whether it's engineering or finance. And I don't, when I say it's not mechanical, The same thing with people who say, well, we balanced the budget. That's not going to solve a problem. If you're a business, you shares, and that's really money, that's debt, and you do that to expand your business. It's what you're paying, not how much the debt is. It's whether you're expanding and spending it in the right places. So I think a lot can be done. If I'm in the government, I will try to get that stuff done.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So just to conclude real quick for everybody in the audience, you're running for representative of Congress, and who's your opponent, and why should they vote for you as opposed to anybody else?
His name is Mike Carey. He's been very briefly in the office, so he doesn't have this history of incumbency. Well, I don't know much about him. I never met him, but if you go to the Wikipedia site and also read the footnotes, you'll find out more about him. Say that he's a coal lobbyist or a former coal lobbyist, and not too friendly on issues. Though he's, I'm conciliatory on sequestration is an issue, and he's advocating coal having a longer existence if they sequester it. But there's a lot of science issues. So I think we're moving away from petroleum. We need to, and he's been up till now, from what I read about him, he's obstructed that. So I think he could have changed. I'm not against him as a person. I'm saying that I think I can advocate for more people and solutions than he is able to, based on what I read about him.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate all your efforts in running for office and giving us the service that we need for our country. Okay, next we're going to move on to.
Well, not only will I say encourage you to vote, even if you don't need to teach young people that how important this is for their lives, their future, and even in some of the people that have nieces and nephews that I raised, but it's.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much, Gary. Okay, next we're going to move on to the two state representatives. I believe we have Anita and Beth Liston here. Hello, ladies. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm going to go ahead and have Anita introduce herself first, and then Beth will go second. Please take 2 minutes to introduce yourself. Go ahead, Anita.
Senator Tina Maharath is here too.
Okay.
Hi, I am Dr. Anita Somani, and I'm running for District 11. It's a brand new district that's about 21% Asian. So it is really truly a district made up of a very large percentage of Asians. I hadn't planned to run for office, but Beth Liston, who is on the call after me, was my rep. And with the redistricting, with all the craziness of redistricting, she was no longer my rep. And when I was asked to run, I thought about it. And then I realized, you know what, it's time. As a first generation immigrant, as somebody who's an OBGYN, I truly want to make this world a better place. I can't make the world a better place, but I can make Ohio a better place through improving our public schools with more funding for public schools, through improving reproductive rights. Access to healthcare is super critical when it comes to our communities, not only just in terms of general communities, but the Asian community also. And then the whole concept of what's happening with anti-Asian, anti-immigrant rhetoric. I think we need to work on that. And as the first Asian American in the House, as the first Asian American OBGYN in the House, I think I could really do a good job of representing our community. I am truly about what is moderate, you know, the idea of public schools, public safety. We need better gun legislation. We need better access to healthcare. So those are my top 3 topics. And I have not been in politics before, so this is a whole new experience. And my campaign literally started on June 24th when Roe v. Wade was overturned and the Ohio Supreme Court said that the 6 Democrats that had sued the courts sued Secretary of State Frank LaRose, we were able to win our case and we were able to be on the ballot for August. So I hope that I can earn your vote. I think there's a lot of things that I know from working with the Asian community, from working during COVID with Greg Lamb. I think there's a lot of things that I have a different insight for than other candidates. So I appreciate y'all being on the call, and I'm happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Beth, go ahead and share with us your introduction.
Hi, I'm Beth Liston. I am state representative currently for the northwest corner of Franklin County, which includes Dublin and Worthington. I'm running for House District 8, which is obviously a different district, which is Worthington and sort of northern Clintonville and some of the Columbus around that area. I was elected in 2019. I lose track. This will be my third term. If you've heard me speak or know me, you know my background is somewhat similar to Anita Somani's, Dr. Somani's, in that I am a physician. I do internal medicine and pediatrics, and I was motivated to run because I truly believe there are health impacts to all policy, and that was an important voice to bring. I've been in the House now 4 years. My focus has largely been introducing bills that help expand access to care, make sure they can get affordable prescription medications, make sure that people can get coverage and that there's sort of fair insurance company practices. I was excited to be able to help expand or to get expanded in the budget the CMH, the Children for Medical Handicaps program, so that it covers older adolescent individuals a little further. I too focus a lot on public education, ensuring our schools have the resources needed to stay excellent and invest in our future. And then a lot of, I think, the voices that we as a Democratic caucus have elevated is economic security, making sure that people can get fair wages and benefits like paid family leave and some funding for childcare. And I would say those are the things I've focused on, in addition to trying to bring that health lens to every policy we talk about, providing the perspective of what it really looks like for people in Ohio, and making sure that we're using the best evidence and not being governed by extreme ideologies that really harm people in our state. So I'm grateful to be here. I know that I've been here a couple of times, and I've been honored to be able to speak with the community and listen to you as well, to try to make Ohio a better place. And I would love your support for District 8 come November 8th. Happy to answer questions.
Great, thank you very much. So Dr. Somani, I feel for you for getting into public service. It is a fascinating journey. I had my personal experience in that. So thank you very much for taking part in that. So the first question I have for the both of you, and we'll have Anita respond to it, and then Beth can, you're more than welcome to chime in afterwards. The question is, what is your view on House Bill 598, which makes it a felony for doctors to perform abortion with no exceptions for rape, incest, or mother's health?
Well, as an OBGYN, I can tell you that politics don't belong in the exam room. I have been practicing OBGYN for 30 years, and abortion is part of reproductive care. So to take one procedure and create a problem where it becomes a felony is going to scare physicians. It's going to scare medical students from practicing in Ohio. Over half the counties in Ohio don't have access to reproductive care, to maternity care. So when we look at our infant and maternal mortality rates, we are really struggling, and a lot of that is correlated to the loss of access to abortion care, to reproductive contraceptive care. So this is a bill that I would strongly oppose, and I think that when you look at the greater impact of it, one of the biggest things that happened in the early 70s when Roe v. Wade passed, when Title IX was passed, was the idea that we wanted to create a world where there was equal access to contraception. We know that being able to plan your family, and it impacts men and women, it's not just about women, but it impacts all of us. So the ability to plan your family when you have children, at what point in your life you have children, affects your reproductive rights as well as your economic rights. So it impacts when women can go to college, what career they can choose to follow. So this is not only a law that hurts physicians, but it's a law that would hurt patients. So it's something that we need to strongly oppose. So yeah, I would be totally against it. And I don't think that we should ever penalize doctors for providing normal reproductive care.
Okay, thank you very much. Beth, any additional thoughts to that?
Yeah, thank you. And I too would oppose 598 and have opposed 598 in a lot of different public forums. For me, this is a really concerning trend where the legislature is taking complicated issues with lots of nuance and gray and difficult circumstances that really belong to individuals and making a black and white law. And in this case, you know, it's especially dangerous in that it's making it a felony for physicians to use their best judgment and work with patients for their health. And I think that that's something that I'm really concerned about broadly, in addition to the impacts of the bill itself on those complicated situations that lots of women find themselves in. So I am certainly against that bill and really am concerned for all of Ohio when we see that trend again and again. And we see the health outcomes that Ohio is experiencing. So,
yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So the next question, Beth, we're going to go ahead and start with you first. What is your view on the repeated initiatives to legalize recreational marijuana in Ohio?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I'm probably a little more nuanced than some on this. I absolutely 100% think people should not be in jail for the use of marijuana. And I believe that, like any other substance that we might use that has positives and negatives, there are, you know, it shouldn't be an illegal decision. So I am comfortable with legalizing marijuana with the caveat that we need to make sure that companies are not targeting children with marketing and advertising the way they've done with other substances like tobacco. And so, I always say in this sort of bill, the devil's a little bit in the details for me. And I want to make sure that we have appropriate regulations in place, much the same way I think we do largely with alcohol, but I worry about how the tobacco industry has really targeted young people and the impact that has had on their growth and development, and then the potential impact on that a marijuana industry that is not appropriately prevented from doing the same can have. So in other states across the country, we've seen increasing accidental ingestions in children. And so again, I with my pediatrician's hat, I had just put a little asterisk by these bills to make sure we do it well and enact it in a safe manner.
Okay, thank you very much. Anita, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I think the issue with recreational marijuana is there is a percentage of people that end up in jail for things that really are very minor, and that increases the impact in the community as far as the cost of putting these people in jail. I do agree with Beth that it's a nuanced approach. I think that we should legalize recreational marijuana to the extent that we regulate it like we do alcohol. So, you don't sell alcohol to minors or to people under 21. You tax it so that you can then use that money for a better good. Trying not, and vaping was an example of this too, where it was targeted to children. So if we're going to legalize marijuana, we probably do want to be very, very careful about how we approach that, how it's marketed, how it's sold, and what the regulations and restrictions are on that. But it's not a gate, I think there's been concerns that it's a gateway drug or it's something that's going to lead to more issues or more concerns with other drug use. I think we can separate it and say that it probably falls into the category of alcohol. So people are going to use it anyway. I think it's reasonable to say, let's tax it, let's regulate it, and let's make it legal.
Great. All right. Thank you very much for your answers. So we're finished with your questions. So thank you for your presence, and thank you for your service to our communities. We appreciate you and the time and energy and everything else that you put into running for office. Okay, next
Thank
we're gonna
you.
go.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was just going to apologize for being in my car. I had a meeting right before this, so I thought I'd get home in time, but unfortunately, here we are in the car, and thank God for modern technology.
Yeah, great. Thank you for being here.
Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye. Okay, next we're gonna go to the state senator race with Tina. Tina, can you go ahead and unmute yourself, please?
Yes, thank you for having me today. Just like the rest of the candidates, I'm juggling a triple book night with multiple candidate forums tonight, so I appreciate Asian American candidate forum being virtually on Zoom, because I think you are my only virtual one tonight. But yes, I am State Senator Tina Maharath. I currently represent Ohio's 3rd State Senate District. I serve on our Senate leadership team as the minority whip. I am a native of Whitehall, which is a suburb of Columbus, near like the east side. I'm the daughter of Laotian refugees, and I'm Ohio's first Asian American woman that was elected into our state legislature back in 2018. I am a mom of 2 boys. My youngest one is a baby who turned 5 months recently, and my oldest is 11, who just started middle school over at Canal Winchester Middle School. But when I first ran for office, my 11-year-old was just 7 years old, so I was a single mom at the time who just wanted to bring a voice for young families over to our state house. And since then, I've done exactly what I vowed to do, which was to fight for working families. It's been an honor of a lifetime to be your state senator these last 4 years, and I'm running for re-election to continue to fight for working families. My father served under the U.S. Army, or served for the U.S. Army under the Laos Army. My mom was an Army nurse before they ran through many rivers and crossed through many fields to go through the refugee camps to give me my life of freedom that I have here today in America. And for that, I am honored to live the life of freedom that I have to make democracy change. But my life was altered though when I was 14 years old and I lost half my family in a car accident. After that, I was over in foster care at 17. And then at 18, I aged out and I essentially became homeless. I was homeless all the way up until I was a single mom at 20 years old, but life has just never been easy for me. But I have community support. My community supported me through it all, especially with the Columbus's Asian Festival. For all those who are on the call that you might know, Dr. Liu, he took me in when I had nowhere to go. I wanted to help the community. I wanted to see community support. So he took me in under his wings, and it's been a wild ride, but I worked with the Asian community from when I was 16 all the way up until I was elected at 27. And I decided to return that support for him through public service instead. I know the struggles of the 3rd State Senate District because I've lived through them. I know the successes of the 3rd State Senate District because I've celebrated them. I'm from this community. I'm for this community, and I fight for this community too. As your state senator these last 4 years, I have fought for good paying jobs, for safer communities, and for access to affordable health care, and for our seniors to provide them the support that they need. I've also fought for women to be able to make their own health decisions. But most importantly though, I've been a mom and a woman who's just picked myself up after life has thrown me down so many times. And I decided it's time to change this world for the better, for my kids and for all Ohioans. I don't want our future generation to go through what I've been through in life. So I ask for your support this November if you are in my 3rd State Senate District, which is New Albany, Westerville, Reynoldsburg, Canal, Grove City, and if we go all the way down to Groveport, and we have bits and pieces of south side of Columbus and west side of Columbus. Because this district is my family. I fight for my family, so this district is my family too. So thank you. I welcome questions.
Great. Thank you very much for sharing your story. Very inspiring to come from those roots and to the success that you have done so far. So the first question is, how would you protect Asian American communities in Ohio from being discriminated against and hated and attacked as the racial frictions increase and the escalating conflict between US and China in the politics side? And more importantly, how would you build unity in our communities?
Yes, so during the global pandemic, I was elected and I had to watch all the trauma rebuild and reopen up again. So I introduced resolution to denounce some of the anti-Asian American hate here in the state of Ohio. In addition to that, I also promoted and introduced my Asian American Commission bill twice now during a General Assembly. So what that is exactly is, it's a voice in state government. So the Asian American Advisory Commission is our voice in state government to the governor's office. Unfortunately, for 2 General Assemblies now, it has not moved past the first hearing. We are the only ethnicity here in the state of Ohio without an advisory commission. So what that means is we have no voice in state government outside of your elected leaders. There's also many processes that goes on to the legislative world, but even in the relationship building world, I just had a relationship building meeting last week with our general consul of China that represents this region. So he represents Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and that discussion stirred up the discussion for what is the future for Ohio and Chinese relations, because we know that Asian American hate's out there. He was concerned that Chinese Americans do not have a voice in our state government, and I expressed that same concern, and so on and so forth. It's a long, drawn-out process that doesn't happen overnight. But fortunate enough for me, I got elected in 2018 and started the process for us. And someday I hope that our next generation will take that torch and continue the process that I started.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your response. The next question is, what is your view on House Bill 383, which will increase sentences for criminals repeatedly caught with illegal firearms?
So when it comes down to firearms, it's a little tricky. So of course, when it comes down to gun reform, I think there definitely needs to be one. Generally speaking, though, we can most certainly protect our right to bear arms while also protecting our communities and our children. Unfortunately, I don't have the bill information in front of me at hand, but I can tell you that from the Senate side, at least, I did introduce legislation called the Defend Our Children's Act that has a comprehensive gun safety plan put in place for the state of Ohio to address some of our concerns when it comes down to gun safety. Some of those provisions do include requiring background checks. It does include having a red flag law, which means the courts can confiscate temporary firearm from someone who's deemed at risk to themselves and others. And there's other provisions in there, such as making sure that the guns are being safely stored. Too many families are going to sleep at night without a child or without a loved one due to gun violence. And I don't know the provisions of that bill because, I'm over in the House, Senate. But in addition to that, anyways, we get hundreds of bills that get passed or get coming to our state legislature, and it goes through a long legislative process regardless. But I can tell you that when it comes down to gun reform, I think that there's need to be changed to defend our children here in the state of Ohio.
Great. Thank you very much. Any concluding thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
No, not that I can think of. I think we covered it all today. I appreciate everyone having a good discussion tonight with the Democratic candidates. I don't want to repeat what our future justice said, but vote up and down the ballot A through Z for us Democrats.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service in the past years as well, Tina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we're going to go ahead and move on to Michael Stinziano, County Auditor. Michael, can you turn on your microphone?
Good. Good job with the last name.
There you go. Did I say it correctly?
You did. Longest name on the ballot, Stinziano.
Great. I like the ethnic background on that one, right?
Yes.
So I'm not too sure if you were there in the beginning, but basically you have 2 minutes to introduce yourselves, and then I will ask you a couple of questions.
Okay. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and always appreciate this chance to introduce myself. I am Michael Stinziano. I have the honor of serving as the Franklin County Auditor. I am serving and finishing my first term, seeking re-election to the office. For those that aren't familiar, I've had a great experience in county government, once serving as the Director of Board of Elections, moved to the State House where I served in the General Assembly, and then a brief time on Columbus City Council. So really passionate about public service and the opportunity to improve our community. Also very important to always share, proud father of a 9- and 7-year-old to rescue pugs Fenway and Wrigley. And I will stop that with my intro, and I look forward to your questions.
Great. Thank you very much for keeping that short. So the first question is, as the real estate market slows down with higher interest rate, how would you ensure that property values are accurate for taxpayers?
So that's a great question. So for those that aren't familiar, the auditor's office, one of our key functions is the reassessment property valuation. And it's such an important role that the auditor's office plays because of how it gets tied to your taxing district and ultimately your property taxes. And so you hit it on the head. We are always evaluating what's going on in the market, what's going on in our community. If you read the article in the Dispatch today, while sales have slowed, Columbus and Central Ohio remains one of the 5th hottest markets in the country. So we are constantly looking at charts, evaluating the trends. The auditor's office serves as the administrator of the role, where it's actually the Ohio Department of Taxation who sets the values ultimately that then we receive with folks. But it is our goal that is not only equitable, but that it's open and transparent. And so 2023 is a big year for Franklin County. It's a mass reappraisal year. We will be communicating with all 450,000 property owners of what the auditor's office tentative value will be. And we're looking forward to engagement from all property owners to make sure we establish that right value with what's going on in the market now, what's going on in the market then, and continuing to make sure that, as you pointed out, we want it accurate and fair.
Great. Thank you very much for that response. I think that's something that's quite important as property values go up and down and everybody wants to make sure they pay their fair share of taxes.
I don't know if you want me to jump in, but fair share of taxes, but it's a unique property values is something you want to see go up, right? It is it's most people's largest investment they make in their family. And so you want that value to go up. Where we have advocated, and Senator Maharath and some other great partners, where can the state law maybe adjust? So while the value goes up, can we improve property tax distribution and that fair share piece being a key component of that?
Yes, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so the second question we have for you is, what would you do if you noticed a discrepancy in financial records of a high-level employee?
What would I do? So the office always is making sure that any spending of any county agency, any employee is for a legitimate public purpose. That is what the charge and the revised code and the standard is. Now, what is a legitimate public purpose can vary based on interpretation, but we have worked closely with both the prosecutor's office, the state auditor's office, if there's anything that we have concerns about or if we need to seek clarification on. And so that accountability is always there. We always strive to make sure that all tax dollars are appropriately spent per our charge and work well with our county partners to make sure that's the case.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much for your thoughts. That's all the questions we have so far. So I appreciate you being present and thank you for your service in the past term. And I wish you good luck in the coming elections.
Great to see everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yep. Thank you. Okay, next we're going to move on to a couple of judges. First, we have Judge Leland. Judge Leland, can you turn on your mic, please, and your video?
I like the fact that you called me Judge Leland. I mean, I don't want to be too premature there, but I appreciate the promotion.
Of course. We always like to think positively in our world. So go ahead and give us a 2-minute introduction of yourself, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Okay, first of all, thank you for doing this. And I've participated in a number of candidate screenings in the last 50 years, and this is probably the best organized and the best well-run screening that I've ever participated in. So congratulations to everybody who's putting this together. I hope that doesn't count as part of my 2 minutes. Anyway, I'm David Leland. I have been an attorney in Columbus, Ohio since 1978, and I'm running for the 10th District Court of Appeals. I'm currently a partner at the law firm of Carpenter, Liston, Leland. We have 40 attorneys in Columbus. And I'm also finishing up my 10th year as a member of the Ohio General Assembly. As a state representative, one of my focuses has been on criminal justice. In fact, I'm the ranking Democratic member on the House Criminal Justice Committee, and we've been dealing with issues such as funding public defenders, making sure that we have bail reform, death penalty reform, ending wrongful convictions in the state of Ohio. These are just a few of the issues that I've dealt with during my term in the legislature. I run for the legislature for the same reason I've run for office. This is the 50th anniversary of the first election I ever won back in 1972. I ran for office then for the same reason I run for office today. And that is, I think that you can have positive change through public service. And I think that being on the Court of Appeals is very important because as we see our democracy under attack, the preservation and the protection of the rule of law is more important now than ever. And here in the epicenter of state government, it's very important that we have a strong judiciary to protect the rule of law and protect our democracy. And I look forward to being part of that strong judiciary on the Ohio Court of Appeals. And by the way, I am unopposed in this election, so thank you for your time.
Wonderful. It's always good to hear from the person that's going to be running for office, regardless if you have other people running against you or not. So the first question is, how would you address issues of racial bias by magistrates and judges within the system currently?
Well, I mean, I think what we're trying to do in the judicial system is put a database together so that we can have records of what people are doing or what kind of decisions are being made. We're doing this for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot of different reasons that we're putting this database together, basically to make sure that justice is being ushered throughout the same state of Ohio on a fair basis, so that we don't have one set of justice in Columbus and another set of justice in Cincinnati or Athens or someplace like that. So I think the creation of this database that the state of Ohio, the Judicial Conference is putting together going forward is going to be very, very important in making sure that everybody gets treated the same under the law.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what is the time frame for this database to be completed?
Well, they're working on it now. I mean, it's in progress. I don't have all the specifics on it, but I know that it's a very, very important priority for the Supreme Court and for the people who are putting this together.
Okay. So once the database is done, what are the specific actions you're going to use to apply the database to make sure that moving forward everything's fair?
I don't want to prejudge the evidence, so to speak. But I think it gives you an idea of how people are being treated, what kind of cases are being handled, what kind of sentences are coming down, what is the color or the ethnicity of the persons. Is there a disparate amount of treatment being done for one group of people versus another? I think it'll just open up a lot of different information to a lot of different people about what is actually happening in the criminal justice system in the state of Ohio.
Okay, great. So will that cover the civil side as well, or just the criminal side?
Just the criminal side.
Just criminal side. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, the next question, and this is more of a case-based question. What would you do if you see a case where the legal procedures were followed to the letter, but the decision was discriminatory against a minority individual?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, it really kind of gets to your whole judicial philosophy, because, you know, we're trained, and you want us to, as judges, we're trained to follow the concept of stare decisis. In other words, you know, you follow the law as it's come down through the history, so that people can understand what they're supposed to do. If we're always changing the law every time there's a court decision, people don't know what the appropriate behavior is to do to follow the law. Okay, but on the other hand, I think you have to also realize that the decisions you make are going to affect real human beings, and there's going to be a real effect. It's not just a paper decision, it's real human beings are being affected by your decision. And so you have to take that in consideration. I don't know, I'd have to, I mean, I'm going to punt on this to a certain extent because I don't have all the facts of your hypothetical case in front of me, but I think that it's important that the law relate itself to real human beings in real life situations. And that's what I'm going to try to do on the court.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much for all your answers. That's all the questions we have for you at this point.
Okay.
So
well, thank you.
Good luck moving forward, and we look forward to your service.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next we have Douglas Noble, who's running for Judge of Court of Common Pleas. Douglas, are you there?
Yeah. How you doing? Actually,
Great.
there's two of us. This is Zach Gwin.
We are outside Trinity Baptist Church, but very glad to be here on the Zoom.
Thank you. So you get two of us.
Oh, so who's the other one again?
This is Zach Gwin.
Zach Gwin, Franklin County Common Pleas Court, GWIN.
Got it. Okay, great. I
So-
gotta make sure I allow time for both of you, even though you have one screen up.
Let me warn you, it's kind of loud out here though. So, and we can't go back in the church. So if you can't hear us, it's because you're trapped behind us.
Okay, got it. Okay, great. Well,
right,
so
cool.
first we're going to give you both of you 2 minutes to introduce yourselves to everyone, and then we'll ask you a couple of questions.
All right.
So,
My name is Douglas
go ahead.
Nobles. I'm running for Common Pleas, Domestic Relations, and Juvenile Court. That's the juvenile court. I mean, that's the family court. I'm currently a prosecutor at the Columbus City Attorney's Office. Started my career as a public defender in the community division of the public defender's office, where I represented clients in thefts, DVs, drunk driving, things like that. In between, I was staff attorney for Judge Jameson, which is the seat I'm running for. As staff attorney, I did research and writing, also focusing on the juvenile criminal docket, and did all the dissolutions. I'm a father of 2 boys, 10 and 6. My wife is due with our first girl in two weeks from tomorrow. So that's my quick short version, because I know we're outside and Zach's with me, so I'll turn it to Zach.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Gwin. I'm an assistant city attorney for the Columbus City Attorney's Office. Before law school, I served as a victim witness advocate. And what that is really helping people navigate the justice system who are the victims of crime. So domestic violence, family of other victims. And what that did is inspire me to go to law school. And I came to The Ohio State University and then served as an assistant city attorney under Richard C. Pfeiffer. Was a trial prosecutor, prosecuted cases in front of judges and juries here in Franklin County. Then left, was in private practice for a short period of time, and then came back to the Zone Initiative. And what I do now is public nuisance litigation in the environmental division here in Franklin County Municipal Court. And what the job is really about is ensuring safe and healthy living conditions for our residents. And that involves code enforcement, Columbus Police, and other entities. And while I've been in the position, 3 things I'm especially proud of. I've been able to close down over 50 drug houses. And the reason a lot of this is very meaningful to me is because it's also the part of the city that I live in, and it's on the west side. 2 of those drug houses have been on my own street. I was also able to start a specialty docket. We represent code enforcement, and so frequently we deal with landlords who might not be taking care of their property, but also folks who have been living in their neighborhood for a long period of time and just need a little bit of help. So we brought together Habitat for Humanity, social workers from Columbus Public Health, and other resource providers to troubleshoot their problems. And with the help of some funding from City Council, we've been able to help a lot of our residents with home repairs, things like roof repairs, gutters, windows, things like that. And then finally, I recently filed one of the largest public nuisance lawsuits in the history of the city, involving a complex with over 300 units. And these frequently involve some of our most marginalized communities, with the goal of really just ensuring that they have dignity in their living conditions. We want to make sure that property owners are keeping them safe and healthy. And so that's a little bit about myself. I'm running for Franklin County Common Pleas Court, and I'd ask you to remember in November to win with Gwin. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for both your introduction, and congratulations on your upcoming child, Douglas. That is awesome. It's an exciting journey.
It is, especially the 3rd time.
Yeah, it is. So it's never the same though.
It's not.
Okay, so the first question I have for the both of you, how would you address the implicit bias that exists in the judicial system, and how would you change it? So Douglas, you can go first on that question.
Well, I guess the easiest thing, I know we probably agree on this, is maybe doing implicit bias training, which is something that you've done, I've done, which really does help. So I guess as judges, we can make sure that the people in the court, our employees, and the people that work for the court take that training, and also recognize it, because once you take the training, then you recognize the actual bias that comes in front of you. So I think as a judge, we're probably limited to what we can do with that, but training the people that come to court or work in the court, and then passing along what we see and know, and make sure that we try to work through that and kind of use our training to kind of see the bias and then try to act on that once we see it. So Zach, if you have something else you want to say.
And on top of that, just besides, I think all attorneys should participate in some form of implicit bias training. You know, the ability to have empathy and understand what biases you might be walking into a situation with are especially important. And, you know, the fact that we're going to be making significant decisions that impact people's lives, you have to understand what preconceived notions you have walking into a situation. And so absolutely something that I think we all need to be focusing on. And I will encourage my staff to take part in such trainings.
Okay, great. So the concept of taking training on this is fairly common across corporate America and all the cities and municipalities and so forth. But how do you make sure that people are applying the training? Is there room given to them to practice to make sure they develop those skills on a systemic wide basis, and as opposed to simply everybody check the box, we did the training and we're done?
So not necessarily. What I would say is that something is very important, but is related, because what we're talking about are results. How do we show results from, what is just an implicit bias training? And I think what's important is looking at the criminal sentencing database, because we don't necessarily have great stats on how different people of different backgrounds are sentenced. And so really, until we have really put the money, and this was something that was proposed by Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, until we really study the issue, I don't think you can really put forward a solution until you've actually taken the time to study it. So what I think is that we need to gather data, look at where our blind spots might be in this process.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. Like I'm running for, so my court's a little different because it's family court. We're dealing with young kids. So I think the same thing applies, that we have to figure out what's being applied to each person in each group, and then try to make a decision based on that. So he's running for Common Pleas General. I'm running for family court, which deals with the juvenile issue. So it's a little different, but it's still like the same concept.
Okay, great. So it looks like we just saw Bill Sperlazza here. Bill, you want to add on to that response? Anything to add?
Hello, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question, but let me see how we're doing here.
Okay, so I'll repeat the question. How would you address implicit bias within the judicial system, and how would you change it to make it better?
All right, I apologize, having some problems there. Yeah, so I caught the tail end of what Mr. Gwin was saying, and I can tell you from a personal standpoint, taking implicit bias training for me was an important moment in my life. It has opened my eyes to implicit bias and the importance of recognizing it, number one. However, I will tell you this. I think that like many professions, every 2 years, attorneys have to submit a number of hours. They have to take continuing education courses. And there are some requirements on professionalism and ethics. Personally, I'd like to see implicit bias training become a standard part of our training as attorneys, because when we are having problems in courtrooms, be it bail or be it sentencing, that the numbers show us negatively affect folks of color, I think that we got to understand that it's judges, it's prosecutors, it's defense attorneys, it's attorneys who are the gatekeepers to these issues. So I personally think that every attorney on a regular basis should engage in implicit bias training. I think that would be a great start to address these issues.
Great, thank you very much, Bill. Since you kind of just joined us on the latter part, you want to go ahead and give us your 2-minute introduction, please?
You got it. Hey, my name is Bill Sperlazza. That's Sperlazza with 2 Z's, Sperlazza. I'm running for judge of the Franklin County Court of Common Pleas. I grew up on the north side of Youngstown, Ohio. I came to Columbus in 2003 to go to law school at Ohio State University. My wife, Abby, is also an attorney. We have 3 children. Autumn is 8, Nora is 6, and my son, Willie, is 16 months old. Outside of my family and work, I've been a youth basketball coach for 13 seasons. I've coached 3rd grade teams. I've been a varsity head coach. I've coached boys, I've coached girls, and everything in between. I've been with the Columbus City Attorney's Office for 17 years. For 7 years, I was a criminal prosecutor. For the last 10 years, I practiced civil law as a plaintiff's attorney, filing nuisance abatement cases on behalf of the city of Columbus, shutting down some of the worst bars, hotels, and carryouts in the city of Columbus. I want you to know about my campaign, that I have the endorsement of police, fire, all of the labor unions, teachers, religious groups. But what I am most proud of is the Columbus Bar Association bipartisan screening committee saw fit to give me a 5-star out of 5 rating. I'm one of only 2 candidates that aren't sitting judges to have gotten that rating. And in the judicial preference poll, attorneys vote in this poll, and they've voted me their preferred candidate by 73.6% of the vote. I tell you that because the folks that I've practiced with and against and in front of for 17 years in the courtrooms of Franklin County have put their faith in me to be their next judge. And I'm asking the folks on this Zoom meeting tonight to also put their faith in me to be their next judge. I want you all to know that there are no R's and D's by our names on the ballot, so it's important to have a plan to vote for your judicial races when you go to the polls. And I ask you to vote for Bill Sperlazza on November 8th, or at early vote. Again, Sperlazza with 2 Z's, Sperlazza.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction. I think
Yes,
I
sir.
saw a message that Douglas need to run. Is that correct, Doug? I think Douglas and Zach needed to run. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask them.
Zach, so I've got
Oh, there
Zach
you
with
go.
me now.
What a small world, just jumping in the car. All right,
Yeah.
great. Do you have Douglas with you as well? Or just the two of you?
Douglas had to step away.
Yeah, I think Douglas is now speaking at the NAACP candidate tonight. Zach and I just finished up.
Okay, great. All right. So I'll ask you two the next question then. In an era where hate crimes are on a rampage, striking a balance between what is fair and free society versus a justice for minority population is complex and difficult. What are some of the most difficulty issues you see balancing freedom of speech and the need to control offensive activity?
So what I can say, the judicial canons really limit what position we can take on an issue that might end up coming before us. What I can say is I have prosecuted hate crimes in the past, ethnic intimidation. So I have experience in the realm, but again, the judicial canons really do put a limit on what type of commitments or things we can say about, a First Amendment issue or something to that effect.
And I would echo certainly what Zach says about the canons of judicial conduct. They do limit what we have to say, but I will tell you that it's important in my mind to elect judges who will treat people in their courtroom fairly, with kindness and dignity and compassion, no matter what their race, sex, socioeconomic status, or anything else is. I think that's the essence of being a judge, is understanding that everybody in your courtroom needs to be treated with the same dignity and respect, and understand that the decisions you make in courtrooms are going to substantially affect the lives of the people that are coming before you. And that is a heavy burden to take, but number one, it must be recognized and understood that your decisions are important. They need to be well thought out, and you need to understand the situations of why people were in the courtroom, not just what are they charged with and what can I do to them, but most importantly, why? Why are they here? Why did they do the thing they are alleged to do that brought them in front of you in your courtroom? Once you can get to the why and start treating and fixing the why, then we can have a better society.
Great. Thank you very much for that thought. One of the biggest issues that I always talk to people on, why are we so busy solving problems? Why don't we spend a lot more time looking at understanding the why and prevent problems from happening in the first place? So thank you very much for your thoughts. So that's all the questions we have. I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedules between being at a church, in a car, wherever you're at, to spend with us. We highly appreciate it, and good luck on the coming elections.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gwin.
Yeah. Okay, next we have Erica Crawley. Erica, are you there?
I'm here. I'm at the church in the hallway.
Wonderful.
Sorry.
All right, Erica. So go ahead and give a 2-minute introduction of yourself, and then we'll follow up with some questions.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here tonight. And again, like I put in the chat, thank you for being flexible as we navigate these two forums. But my name is Erica Crawley. I am your Franklin County Commissioner. I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio, born and raised there, and then kind of moved around. I went to school in Toledo, dropped out of college, went to the military, enlisted in the military 22 years ago this month. And that's when my public service career really started. I served from 2000 to 2003 on active duty during Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, obviously 9/11, and then I served in the reserves from 2007 to 2008. I am a mother of twin girls. Their names are Hope and Faith, and they are kind of my inspiration for getting into politics when I did back in 2017. And then I am an advocate. I have advocated before I was elected on behalf of children and families in the nonprofit space, helping child care centers get accredited on a national level through the National Association for the Education of Young Children. I also work for Head Start, Early Head Start program as a partnership coordinator, working with families, bringing them into the program. And then as a health coordinator, making sure our babies and kiddos had their hearing and vision screenings and immunizations, and then identifying those who may have been delayed. And then I worked as a court-appointed special advocate for children as a volunteer, and then I went on staff full-time, advocating and being a voice and representing the best interests for children who are in the foster care system who have been abused and neglected. Before coming to the Board of Commissioners 15 months ago, I was in the legislature. I resigned to take this appointment. I served in the legislature for I got elected in 2018, started in 2019, all the way up until July 1st of last year when I resigned to come to the Board of Commissioners. And I'm looking forward to being elected to a 4-year term and would love your support.
Great, thank you very much for that introduction. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask you a couple of questions. The first question is, as tax revenues are impacted by the recession, how would you ensure a balanced budget?
So for the county, so we are the budgeting and appropriating authority for the county. We manage about a $2 billion budget, and our revenue comes from sales and use tax. And we have not raised that in, I want to say, the past 3 years. We did in 2019 just to have a little bit more money coming into our conveyance fee, going to affordable housing. And so we are fiscally conservative. We are very responsible. And so our budget, which we're in budget talks now, continues to be balanced and making sure that all of the agencies, so we support 35 agencies, all of the elected offices countywide, as well as 14 agencies directly under the Board of Commissioners, which is 14, are, budgeted and are fair and balanced.
Okay, great, thank you very much. So the second question is, how would you consciously build a diverse team that is competent to perform the functions under your leadership?
Great question. So some of the people on the call may know that back in 2019, we started having a conversation, but early 2020, before the pandemic even really hit us, in February, March timeframe, the Board of Commissioners passed racism as a public health crisis, and they put a lot of initiatives in that resolution, not to be performative, but then to really address the health disparities that we see in the county. Well, that resolution then turned into us looking at a racial equity council and making sure that all of the agencies under the Board of Commissioners were representative of the community. And we, being honest, we have realized that some of our departments, like our public facilities and management, our fleet department, are not really diverse. They really are a lot of older white men. We're getting ready to see a void in talent because there's a number of people who are getting ready to retire. There's not a lot of women and not a lot of people of color. And so it is important for us as commissioners, as we did a survey of our employees, to say, does diversity matter to them? We contract with a consultant that does our anti-racism training, cultural competency training, to talk about the issues in different departments and having agencies where communication can flow up and down, but one that also was more diverse. So we have realized our own inequities, and we're trying to fill that gap, which is one of the reasons why we created, County Futures, which is a workforce development program to get more candidates of color to come to the county to work in our public facilities and management department, our fleet department, but any other agency, job and family services as well, but really prioritizing those agencies that don't have diversity. So, and it is one of the pillars out of our racial equity council. So the council meets, and then they made 13 recommendations on making sure that we had a county government that is more diverse, but also those that we contract with and those agencies and organizations externally that we contract with also value diversity. And so we are currently implementing the first 3 recommendations. And one of those is that's how we created Creating County Futures.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that response. Glad to hear that you're taking steps to move towards a more diverse team. Okay, so that's all the questions we have.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
you.
if you may, well,
Yeah,
can
go
I
ahead.
just add real quick? That's just for County Futures. I mean, but we have a number of workforce development programs, 4 of which just launched since I became a commissioner 15 months ago. And one is Tech Women of Color. So we know that we have in Central Ohio, even with Intel coming, that we don't have enough individuals of color or different ethnicities in the tech field. And so 200 women can go through Tech Women of Color. That's a $4.5 million investment. So we can try to have a tech industry that is more representative of the county as well. So I know your question was more specific to what we're doing for, directly in the county, but I wanted you to know that also we're taking steps to have a more diverse workforce in specific areas too.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, the news with Intel coming brings a lot of different challenges to Ohio, and workforce development is definitely one of them. And I hope everybody on the call is aware of the tech cred that is available for everybody to take additional training, especially as minorities, to develop their skills, whether it's technical or managerial, whatever that is, to better their skills so that we have a better workforce ready for Intel. So,
right.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bye-bye. Good luck in the elections. All right, finally, we have Russ Harris, who is running for state representative. Hey, Russ, how you doing?
Doing well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you great. So
good.
Yeah, go ahead and give us a 2-minute introduction, and then we'll ask you some questions.
Absolutely. My name is Russ Harris, and I'm Ohio, son of Ohio. I was born in Middletown, Ohio. I lived in the Dayton area for many years, and went away to graduate school, but came back in 1988. For 30 years, I had a career representing the teachers of Ohio with the Ohio Education Association. I was around the State House as a registered lobbyist and advocate for 30 years. And it really was a blessed career because public education is one of the best causes that we could possibly represent. For about the last 20 years, I've taught economics at the university level. I've taught at Ashland University and Franklin University. I love teaching, and I've taught thousands of students over the years and opened their eyes to not only the capitalism that we have here, but in world economic systems. The reason that I decided to run this time was, I'm pro-choice, I'm pro-labor, and I'm pro-public education. And I see all of those things under attack at that State House. And the worst thing that I think we could have in Ohio politics is simply this business of these super majorities in the Senate and House, where we really don't have a functioning democracy. We've got to get back to some balance between the parties in order to have real bipartisan support and put forth the kind of legislation. Ohioans do not want this extreme legislation. I talk to business people all the time, and they tell me this is so bad for Ohio to be in the national news on this extreme legislation. It absolutely is. We've got to stop that. We've got to bring most of politics back to the center and be much more moderate on both sides of the aisle.
Great. Thank you very much for your very powerful statement there. I think you answered one of the questions already, so I won't bore the audience to that question again. On the issue of recreational marijuana, what's your view on that with the repeated initiatives to legalize recreational marijuana in Ohio?
In 2019, I was diagnosed with a tumor in my throat. And during the period of recovery, I actually tried to use medical marijuana but it didn't suit me, and I didn't even renew the certificate or the license, whatever I had. The problem that I see with completely just granting a free and legal status to marijuana has to do with driving and operating vehicles and heavy machinery, going to work, operating heavy machinery, that kind of stuff. I don't know how to solve the problem. And until we come up with some sort of controls, in a sense, marijuana is not different than alcohol. And we have very strict laws about the use of alcohol and being under the influence when you're driving. We also should not let people be under the influence of marijuana while they're driving. So I want to work on that problem, but I guess I'm not like some of the Democratic liberals that are willing to just go and make it legal for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what you're saying is that there should be limitations on how this is done.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. And then one final question is, being an economic expert, one of the fascinating pieces that I see in politics is that politicians love to take credit or blame somebody for the business cycle that happens. And it's fascinating to see many people in business don't necessarily stand up to say, hey, there's a business cycle that happens. The cycle has to go up and down. It's part of the business cycle. Politicians should not take credit for that. But at the same time, a lot of politicians are saying what they're going to do to fight inflation, fight the recession, and so forth. What's your view on that, and how do you correct that?
Well, I don't think you can stop politicians from taking credit for stuff that they didn't do. That somehow is in the is in the nature of the character. But my focus in the Ohio House is going to be on small businesses. Most of the businesses in the United States are small businesses, and we really need to. In the old days, and I'm gonna go back to actually a Republican governor on this. Governor Jim Rhodes, he used to send people to other states to recruit business into Ohio, and we need to have that attitude again. And with Intel coming into Ohio, what we need to really look at is all of the cottage industries and everything else that's going to be spun off of that, in terms of not only educating people to work there, but in building the infrastructure that will support the manufacturing, the logistics, the delivery, all of that stuff that we're going to need to support Intel. We're not ready to support Intel right now. It may take us 3 or 4 years in order to get ready to support it, but we need to make the plans to do that now. As far as the business cycle goes, as I said, it is almost laughable why politicians, most politicians don't even understand what the technical definition of a recession is, and if they're not the party in power, they say we're in a recession. That's not technically true, because they don't understand the definition of a recession. So I'd like to have them, a lot of these politicians, I'd like to have them in my my macroeconomic classes, so that I could give them a good, let's say, a good serving of what capitalism and American, I often say, and there's all kinds of sayings around economics, but I often say that economics is politics in disguise. And I think there's a lot of truth in that statement, and there's a fine line between the two. And as I go on in my career, I want to help people, not only people that are elected officials and so forth. I want to continue to help young people understand the economic world that they live in and to live better in that world. So once again, my name is Russ Harris. It's House District 10, that is south of Columbus in the Grove City area, but it includes Urban Crest, Grove City, and the southern wards of the city of Columbus.
Great. Thank you very much, Russ. I love the candor that you bring to your our conversations here. I think we can probably go on talking a lot more about economics and the Intel project.
Yes.
And especially on the small business side, the biggest challenge a lot of small businesses are afraid of currently is when Intel comes, they're going to lose a lot of their labor to Intel. And how do they stay afloat with that? And there's a lot of endless amount of challenges that comes with Intel.
That's right. That's right. But we have to get ready and start planning for that now, or we won't be ready in the next 4 or 5 years.
Yes, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you very much for taking your busy time to come and join us.
Thank
we
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
Good luck in the elections.
Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps it up for everybody. Thank you very much for attending. As part of our process, please make sure you register to vote and get out there in November to vote for everybody. You've heard a lot of candidates. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to some of the Republican candidates so you can see their perspectives and how they may differ, or how they may contribute to our society and community as a whole. So thank you very much for attending. Back to you, Vincent.
Thank you, Ted, for great moderation and a great flow. And we got a great candidates, and they shared good messages with our community, and great work. And I want to point out that there are a few candidates. We contacted them, and they were not able to join us due to conflicts. And we would like to acknowledge them because other candidates, they didn't respond to our request at all. So there are 3 candidates. The first candidate was State Representative Adam Miller. He's on a military duty, and he was not able to make it. And also the second candidate was Carly Edelstein. She's running for state representative. Third candidate is Heather Swiger. She's running for judge. So I'm going to put their name in the text message. That way you know their name, and pay attention to their candidacy as well. Like Ted mentioned, we have another candidate forum coming out tomorrow, same time, 7 to 8:30 for the Republican candidates, and hopefully everyone can join us. Again, thank you so much. Good job, Ted. Good job to all the candidates, and hopefully see you tomorrow soon.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.